The Fed loves to print money, there's no denying that. They can give money to institutions all over the world and face no consequences or even questions for that matter. In 2008, however, Congress asked Neil Kashkari, "Who do you work for?" essentially questioning the validity of this entity itself. Today, nobody would dare challenge the Fed. They are more powerful than ever before. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Today we are going to talk about the Fed. We're going to talk about the Treasury. We're going to talk about little Mr. Munchkin. I want to get into the programs, the stimulus programs that are there and maybe won't be there anymore. I'm going to talk about Switzerland. I've got information about Argentina. I've got some about the UK and some information about the stock market and what's been happening there as well. It's going to be a jam-packed episode. Let's get into it right away. Fraud is a banned word in US aid program awash with it. If you remember the video I did just recently talking about the PPP loans and how many of these different institutions had to go bankrupt, they couldn't pay back, they went bankrupt because they weren't having that revenue stream coming in, and so they closed down. That, of course, puts a bigger burden on the public because they are paying the taxes that are funding this. And the expectation is that most of that would have been paid back. There are a lot that are forgivable. You have to look at the fine print on those. Forgivable loans, meaning they do not have to pay back. But essentially, the expectation was, hey, we're going to get some of this back. We're going to recover it. And hopefully the economy will recover at the same time. Also, I did videos talking about how guys are buying Lamborghinis with this PPP loans. Some of them get caught, but just imagine how many did not get caught, showing you that this can happen and actually does. Workers say that they are told to mark dubious requests, quote, duplicate. Vague notes could stymie congressional scrutiny, fund recovery. Now, before I get into this is not a fact. This is some information that was put out there and I cannot verify it, okay? They're just giving us some insight, some people, you know how it works, but I think it's important because it's going to add to the rest of the data that we have talked about before around these PPP loans. The U.S. agency facing mounting scrutiny over how it doled out checks from a $212 billion relief program has privately directed employees not to use the word fraud in writing if they spot suspicious applications. And we're talking about the SBA, the Small Business Administration, the same Small Business Administration that was receiving requests from big businesses. So it's kind of strange. But anyway, they just talk about what's happening here. And like I said, there's speculation around it, and it's not something that I normally get into because I like to just give you the information after the fact. I like to put together these videos as a result, but I just wanted to show you this. I'll get into a couple points here in just a second. So there were 4 people involved in this. They were told to do this, and of course they don't want to be named and so on. So I don't know really what's going on, but take a look. The rationale given to some employees, aid documents could be targeted by public records requests. The directive threatens to make it harder for the SBA to gauge the scope of abuse of the EIDL program as the agency faces congressional calls to explain how it will identify any grants and loans sent to scammers and recover taxpayer money. This is a problem. It is very clear in this paragraph here. There's just some quotes of them denying it. This is not happening. Don't worry. But we know that the way that any of these programs work is that you have the taxpayer money. Your money gets put into this funnel that they call government, and by the time it makes it through, it is always going to be less at the end. That's just the nature of it, and you hope that the funnel is somewhat, let's say like this, because you lose a minimal amount. But often what we get is that this funnel ends up leaving not much left at the end. Okay, I hope I make myself clear with that. But essentially, this is just showing us how one program after another, it just stinks. Munchkin declines to extend several Fed emergency lending programs. And let me just read this part. Fed's corporate credit, municipal lending, and Main Street lending programs won't be renewed. Okay, so there are several programs that were put into place, as you know, where the Federal Reserve skirted around all the rules and regulations and laws that really put them in a box. I don't even think they should exist, but that's a whole different story. Anyway, they put them there. They're only allowed a very small bunch of tasks that they're able to do. They went way around. I mean, mortgage-backed securities, should they even be doing that? I mean, that's ridiculous, but they went way farther than that today. So now what is happening here is that they are sort of ending some of these programs. Now, I think it's interesting if you listen to the video that he did, Munchkin, with Jim Cramer, actually. They did an interview. And essentially what has happened here is that he makes some good points. I do agree. These programs were already extended. Okay, the uptake on these programs was minimal. There wasn't much interest in them to begin with, and there are many other programs that are in place today that are being used. So essentially what he's saying is that, look, there's no need for us to extend these. We don't have a use for them. We'll close them up. We can open them if we need to. And certainly on that level, not that I agree with the programs in general or what these institutions do, but he does make a lot of sense. So now the market doesn't like that, of course, because they want more and more and more, but ultimately they'll probably just ignore it as they do everything else. Now, the Federal Reserve came out with a statement afterward, and I thought this was interesting. I didn't think they would have any input, but clearly they do. The Federal Reserve would prefer that the full suite of emergency facilities established this year would continue to serve their important role as a backstop for our still strained and vulnerable economy. Quite interesting to say the least. You don't often get these type of statements put out by the Federal Reserve, but here it is. In the CNBC article, they're just talking about it further. One of the problems was that there wasn't enough lifeboats on board, and then none of those lifeboats were being used when the boat left the dock, but when you needed them, they weren't there. These are the lifeboats for the economy. These are the places for companies to go when there is no place to go, and whether they are small businesses or medium-sized businesses, not the big ones that can go to the capital markets, but the little ones. Certainly interesting, but the truth of the matter is that their uptake was quite minimal. So I don't think they want anything to do with it to begin with. And we'll just see what's happening right now, because this is not a solution. If you look at, obviously, right at the beginning of this, there was some real interest in it. There was a lot of money that was handed out, but that ended rather quickly. So what is going to happen? Do you just keep the taps open at all times? I do think that this is ridiculous considering what we have noted up until this point. All right, some information about the UK. Fantastic. Boris Johnson unveils 24 billion in spending splurge to make Britain the naval superpower of Europe once again. Well, there's a problem with the UK right now that, in my opinion, you think about what is going on right now. Everything from Brexit and onward has not looked positive at all. Ever since that time frame when they started talking about Brexit, things got worse. And that is quite unfortunate because, you see a lot of these different countries around the world that are dealing with the crisis. And it was as if before anything even happened, a crisis started to build. Did you notice that? I mean, my friends in the UK, please tell me, as you experienced this, They talked about a Brexit, which, by the way, here we are approaching 2021. It still hasn't happened. And already somehow it has weakened the system within. It is extremely strange, to say the least. But here you can see the UK's uneven jobs recovery, change in active job postings in the UK from March to October 2020. Look at the bottom of this list. London, minus 18.7. And then you can go through here if you're interested. You could take a look at all the different areas. But London is definitely the one that has been hardest hit. Here is the chart directly from the source itself. I just wanted to give you that. The other chart is a little bit easier to read from Statista, but I always give the source directly. And you can see here, growth in job postings by government office region. And at the very bottom, looking at London, the same data, it is minus 18.7%. That is not good. And if you are in the UK, if you are in London, please let me know what you see. We all need to know. That's all for this video. If you found that informative, hit that thumbs up button. When you do, you are supporting me. Thank you for that. If you want to learn how to sell stuff online, I'm talking about e-commerce. It's so complicated, but if you look at this course that I created, I know you will find it to be simple. Check it out, theamazongps.com. Hey, look at this too. Right here, you're going to see my books. They make it so simple, so easy to learn the financial system. Check them out. Do not delay. They're in the link in the description. If you want the audiobook instead, themoneygps.com. Wait, don't go anywhere, because if you haven't watched this video yet, you definitely want to do. Click it. I will see you there.